And that tells me that it's more probably about politics than the actual letter of the law. And I think that will help the situation if a mom has another alternative to raising it herself. To have a two-state solution, you have to have two sides that want that solution. You could start oil exploration to see what is there. That would be an issue that he would be addressing as president. Is there another shoe to drop, something we don't know about? And if not, then why is he gone?
About why maybe President Trump would decide to pull out of this.
At least a dozen good reasons for pulling out of it. Let's start with China starting in 2030. That's actually when the agreement technically ends, is 2030. So, I mean, I don't think that was very toughly negotiated. I think we have another situation where it was a negotiation that was extremely poor for the United States. Trump campaigned on pulling out of it. This is a campaign promise kept. He was elected, and that was one of the reasons he would have been elected. The accords themselves, as Mark said, are not enforceable. They're all voluntary. 195 nations, if you look at some of them, Pakistan said we might do something after we meet our maximum amount of production of carbon so that they can maximize their own economy. But they're part of the accords, and we're not a part of it. So this whole agreement is toothless, and it was the MIT study that the president quoted when he said that if everybody kept to it as they promised they would in it, it would lower carbon emissions, temperatures due to carbon emissions by 0.2 degrees in 100 years, which is clearly not going to have hardly any impact whatsoever. And that was if everybody kept it, which nobody thinks that would happen. So there was no reason to do this other than to economically harm the United States. There's a reason why a lot of people wanted us to take the biggest hit, and it's not just because we are the biggest carbon emission producer. We have the biggest economy. We're just cranking it. So it makes sense that we would. But it's not just because that. It puts us at an economic disadvantage. He knew that. And I would say politically, Haley, he took a step towards re-election because Pennsylvania and Ohio is deeply impacted by coal production, by shale production, by natural gas production. And he just opened up the opportunity for hundreds of thousands of jobs in those states. So there's a lot of good reasons that we should have pulled out of this, and very little to lose by doing so.
You know, why are they kind of cutting off the negotiations?
Well, there's something to be said for keeping your word. If you agree to have an agreement, the rest of the world's going to say, look, this is the agreement we agreed to. You can't just leave the table and come back and want more.
Which is why, when we have agreements that are usually called treaties, they are approved by the Senate. So President Trump did not agree to this treaty. President Obama did on his own, and then we call it not a treaty, like we did with the Iran nuke agreement, so that it wouldn't have to go through the Senate. The same thing there. Look, one of the big issues with this, really, and some people consider it the biggest one, some constitutionalists consider it the biggest one, is that this is in principle a loss of sovereignty because of the authority that other nations could have on the U.S. and on the U.S. economy and on decisions the U.S. makes regarding the U.S. economy and emissions. Now, since it's voluntary, probably not. That's why it's in principle a real big problem. So the very idea, as Mark was pointing out rightly, that that Britain and France and England and Germany have all said, no, we're not going to restart it again, kind of makes that point, really. And so it seems to me that if Trump's main issue, and I don't know if it was, but if Trump's main issue is we got a bad deal like we have with China, like we have with Mexico, like we did with Iran, he thinks we just got a bad deal and is willing to renegotiate it, them saying no, well, that makes them somewhat complicit in it, unless there's more to their reasoning for wanting the deal than simple global warming.
On the campaign trail, he did occasionally call it a hoax. We had at least one statement that he said that, but he hasn't necessarily taken that hard line since he's been elected.
I don't think he has. I don't know if he's going to or not. I mean, you know, on the campaign trail, he was careless with a lot of things that he said, right. And that was certainly one of them that he was careless with. But that doesn't really change what things are. When you'd asked about the politics, I really disagree on the political impact of it with what Mark Weston was saying, because actually I think it would have been politically disastrous for him not to have pulled out of it, being in touch with his base, as I am. I think that would have been a big mistake. And Mark Gordon is right in that this is very short term, because his re-election will more than likely hinge on the economy and the strength of the economy. It normally is about the economy, and it would take something extraordinary like, you know, war with North Korea or something like that for it not to be about the economy. It is not going to be changed at all based on the Paris Accords.
Even if Trump is reelected, which I do not think is going to happen, if the Republicans do not change their position on climate change, it is still a suicide bill.
Well, I'll just say that the Paris Accords were not going to impact climate change hardly at all, even by MIT's own analysis of it. If Comey confirms what has been leaked already, and nothing more than that, then there's really nothing to it. Nothing changes really, because the confirmation bias is just right. People are going to hear what they're going to hear. Mark Weston and I will watch those proceedings hear the exact same things, and have different conclusions from them. And that's pretty representative of the American public right now.
Right, I agree with that. So what are your thoughts? Give everyone a chance to respond to this, but what are your thoughts? Are they going to dig up anything on Jared Kushner, and is he in the right position where he should be? Should he have stepped away as this investigation is going on?
I think he's in a terrible position. I wish Jared Kushner was not involved in White House in any way other than visiting for family affairs. I don't think he has any role he should play. His views have been liberal Manhattan Democrat. That is not what anybody who voted for Trump wants. Jared Kushner has no experience in these things. He has nothing to recommend him in being involved with these things. I wish he would just stay away, and I wish he and Ivanka would both stay away from the White House, go make a ton of money doing something, and stay out of the politics of things that are not really reflective of the president's winning base. That said, the concern here is the constant concern that we have is that if you can insert Russia into anything dealing with the White House in any way, it immediately becomes the story du jour for the next 24 hours, no matter how nothing there is to it. My guess is we're going to find that a guy who was involved with global real estate around the world and selling to people from around the world probably had dealings with people in Russia, probably with bankers specifically in Russia. So whether they tie something nefarious to or not, we'll see. But my suspicion is no. My suspicion is it's going to be just like it's been all along with Russia. A whole lot of smoke and no fire, a whole lot of nothing that is in the realm of actual evidence, just like James Clapper, which was Obama's director of national intelligence, just said a week ago. There is no evidence suggesting collusion. I suspect this is just going to be more of the same of that. And Mueller could change that equation. The special prosecutor Mueller could change that equation, and we'll have to wait and see on that. But so far, there's nothing there. I think that one of the problems that we have with the climate change situation, and we've talked about this on Alan's show before, is that there are some of us that just distrust the data at the bottom because of the known public scandals we've had out of England and other places among climate scientists who have changed the data to make it look worse, which makes us then wonder if we can. And then on the Paris Accords, can we trust the reporting of it? Because there is that video when it was signed of the reporters and in the press pool there, about 40 of them that were covering it, that jumped up and clapped and cheered and hugged each other and danced when it was passed. So I'm not sure that I can trust any of this.